What?
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Let's Talk Seahawks podcast. I'm your host, Robert Smith, along with my co-host, Adam Carver-Stellman. Today, we'll be reviewing day 3 of the Combine, reviewing the quarterbacks, wide receivers, and tight end groups, and then give a little preview for day 4, the offensive linemen and the running backs. So, Adam, let's talk Combine and what the Seahawks might do with what we saw.
Yeah, this is one of those days where I think there was a little bit of interest watching this because I think we know the Seahawks are going to be addressing their pass catchers, and I think we both think that the Seahawks will address the quarterback position at some point in this draft. So this was a pretty consequential day as far as workouts go to kind of see what guys have kind of put themselves in that conversation for the Seahawks to draft. So yeah, this was definitely one of those heavier watch days for me.
I thought so as well. It was one of those where I had to focus on so many different guys because you have the wide receivers. I don't think we need a wide receiver in this class. I think the Seahawks might grab one just to kind of hedge their bets. But you were focused on the wide receivers. You were watching the throws from the quarterbacks. I thought the tight end group, we could have grabbed one of those guys too. So people across the board, I think, were targets for the Seahawks. And I had a sick baby at home, so I spent about 2.5 to 3 hours holding my 10-month-old so that she would stop crying and watch the Combine. She loves football, so she was okay with it. But my note-taking was maybe a little lacking yesterday.
Yeah, probably a little bit difficult with the no hands and cradling. Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah, speech to text, that definitely helped me out on the notes program on my phone, though. So Adam.
Oh, I would love to see that. Just knowing, as someone who uses speech to text a lot and knows the grammatical errors and the misspellings that pop up in that, I would love to see the actual notes taken before this. But yeah.
Let's just say Apple doesn't always do so well with the names. Yep. Anyway, how did you feel about this quarterbacks group?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's pretty safe to say that there are some athletes in this quarterback group. You could say that if even if the only person you watched was Anthony Richardson, who had a hell of a day. That of all the people that improved their draft stock yesterday, I think he's the number one guy. I would not be surprised. There were a lot, and this is not some take or hot take by me. There's been plenty of people out there saying it. If he put himself in that conversation to go even as the number one quarterback off the board, because his athletic measurables are off the charts.
Yes, they are. For some of you who didn't look at the numbers yet, Anthony Richardson ran an official 4.4340. He jumped 40.5 inches in the vertical. He broad jumped 10 feet 9 inches. Off the charts. I mean, this guy really showed the athleticism that we all knew was there. And then he threw the ball 60 plus yards in the air. I mean, he had a really great day as far as the physical tools aspect of it goes.
Yeah, if you were just looking at arm strength as your number one thing for the quarterback, the number one and number two would be him and Will Levis. They would be the number one and number two quarterbacks off the board. That's not to say that CJ Stroud didn't have a good day working out. He absolutely did. But the workouts by Levis and Richardson were just, I mean, there's a reason why Zach Wilson went as the second overall pick. That's because he had a workout similar to what these guys did, launching themselves into that conversation. I think that the one to really watch is, for at least for Seahawks fans, is going to be Richardson. And I say this, and we've had this conversation back and forth a million times because he has been mocked often to the Seahawks. And I think both of us are pretty, or we're both of us are on the same page in that we don't want the Seahawks to take Anthony Richardson. But I got to tell you, If he's there at 5 and the Seahawks can't find a trade partner to offer them everything that they want to move down, I would not be shocked at all to see John Schneider pull the trigger here. It wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah, I mean, he's a real toolsy guy. I hope the Seahawks address the quarterback position, but later in the rounds, and that's kind of what I was looking at, were the second and third tier guys. I thought Stetson Bennett had a great combine. I thought Jake Haener and Tyson Bagent as well had good days. There's something about Will Levis that gives me pause. I mean, he looked great, threw the ball well. I'm not sure what it is. I need to do more work.
It's the fact that he puts mayonnaise in his coffee. That's the thing that gives you pause.
That must be it.
That should get everybody pause. Everybody should have pause just knowing that fact about this man.
How about the wide receivers? How'd you feel about this wide receivers group?
This is a really deep class. I know that this isn't like the wide receiver classes of the last couple of years where we clearly got those guys at the top that are going to come out and be day one starters pushing for records as rookies. I don't think that we've got those guys in this class. But I think this is a really, really deep wide receiver class. And I wouldn't be surprised to see the Seahawks take a couple of bites at that apple when it comes to drafting. Not a position of need, like you said, that you think the Seahawks necessarily need to address in this draft, but I think it's one that they can and will address in this draft.
Yeah. For me, my number one wide receiver is Jordan Addison. As far as the guys that worked out, I thought Josh Downs, Zay Flowers, they both looked really good. Guys that I think the Seahawks could target. I also really liked what I saw out of Puka Nacua out of BYU. I think he's that type of gadget guy. The only player in the NCAA who had 5 receiving touchdowns and 5 rushing touchdowns. So kind of a guy you can do a lot.
Yeah, kind of a Deebo Samuel light.
Yeah, exactly. We also had
there were
Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. No, I was just going to say there were quite a few guys that I think stood out to me that were just that tested off the church. Tyler Scott from Cincinnati is another guy I think that we could look at if we were looking at picking up a guy later in the rounds. I think Cedric Tillman had a pretty good combine. I'm excited for that because this is a guy that I was watching. He may have put himself firmly in that day 2 conversation, which might put him out of reach for the Seahawks because I don't know that they're going to address the position with one of their first 5 picks. But it was great to see him go out there and move really well. I think Parker Washington from Penn State's another guy. So there's a lot of options for the Seahawks in this draft if they want to address the wide receiver position. A lot of different guys that bring different things to the table. I think there's a guy Jackson Smith and Jigba is a guy that's been mentioned with the Seahawks a few times that they do end up addressing the wide receiver position early in the draft. He's another guy I think that we again, like Anthony Richardson, it would be a surprise to see the Seahawks take a wide receiver that early, but it also wouldn't be that shocking.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. He definitely looked good. It always helps when your quarterback's thrown to you, though. So I know that happened a couple times in the rotation. Good for them. What'd you think of this really deep tight end class?
These were probably the most impressive workouts of the day. I actually sent out a couple of texts addressing this exact thing last night. I think that Darnell Washington may have put himself in the conversation to be the first tight end off the board. I think someone out there is going to get enamored with the size and strength that guy has. The workout that impressed me the most with him was the sled. It's basically a weighted sled that you're pushing upfield. This is meant to simulate what you would look like blocking downfield in the run game. And he looked like an offensive lineman. He moved that sled like it weighed nothing.
Yeah, that's kind of something that he takes pride in. They mentioned it on the broadcast, but he thinks of himself as a 6th offensive lineman who is eligible to go out and catch passes. So he takes pride in blocking, and that's something I really like in the tight end position. I think if you can't block, go play wide receiver or running back. But and this class has a lot of those well-rounded, maybe not as dominant of blockers that Washington is, but they have guys who can get it done. If you watch the sled work, there was maybe one or two guys who worked out, and obviously Dalton Kincaid didn't work out, and there were a couple guys that didn't work out, so we didn't get to see them. But there were only a couple guys who had problems with the sled. Most of those guys looked great on the sled, which translates into blocking technique. And so I'm excited for this class. I think it's absolutely deep. I wrote here, this class is insane. It's, if you need anybody,
that was the text you gave me too. That was the text you shot me too, was that this is an insane tight end class.
Insane tight end class. Yeah.
A guy that I did want to point out is Zach Kuntz, a guy that I think had the best day of any tight end. He was in the top 3 of every single category for tight ends. And he also had an impressive just a hands workout and route running. This is a guy I didn't know much about. Old Dominion is not a school that I watch often when I'm looking at my college games. This is not a big Power 5 school, but I'm getting ahead of myself. This is a guy who transferred to Old Dominion. He had started out at Penn State, and I think if he had finished his career at Penn State, this is a guy that we would be talking about in that top 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 tight ends going in this draft. I still think he could be in the top 5 going or to come off the board in the draft. But I think of all the people that acquitted themselves well and affected their draft stock in a positive way, he's the tight end that did that the most.
Yeah, I thought he had a good day as well. I also really liked what a few of the other guys did. Let's take a look here at the athletic guys. So I didn't even know who Will Mallory was, and he went out there and put up a 4.54 40. So I have to take a look at him to see if he's one of these well-rounded guys or if he's a move tight end. But yeah, and Jack Kuntz was right behind him at 4.55. I thought Sam Laporta had a sneaky good combine. He had,
this is the guy that
one catch that he dropped in the drills. But other than that, I mean, he looked good all around, and he was somebody I went into the day watching.
Yeah, this is a guy that I think we both mentioned as a guy that we're looking at because we think that this is a guy that's going to be later or available later in the draft. The Seahawks could look to address that position if they wanted to on either day 2 late or day 3 or 4. Or sorry, day 3. There's no day 4. I meant rounds 3 or 4. But yeah, him and I think also Cameron Letu out of Alabama had a pretty decent one. This is a guy that is a little undersized, and I think we both mentioned as a guy that we want to look at just to kind of see how he acquits himself. Even though I think he's 6'2" or 6'3", he looks like he's got all the tools to be an impactful tight end.
Yeah, I'm familiar with Letu. I have to do a little more work. I know that he's a blocking guy. But yeah, we'll have to see how those guys look at their pro day to get some numbers on some of those guys.
The pro day.
Yes, the pro day. So we're going into today. Today is the 4th day of the combine. It's the final day. And we have offensive linemen and running backs. How do you expect the Seahawks to approach this offensive lineman day, knowing that is probably our biggest position of need, knowing that we need 2 interior linemen, a center, and at least one guard?
Yeah, I think this is. This is one of the 2 positions that we've talked about most. I think going into this draft are the interior defensive line and the interior offensive line. So this is definitely something that I'm going to be watching. For me, it's more about watching some of those guys, seeing who, similar to the tight end class, who are some names that I'm not really or necessarily focusing on. They're going to jump off the proverbial page and kind of stand out to me because I think that because of what we've seen during this combine and seeing how many positions are fairly deep in this class and how many opportunities the CX have to improve and set themselves up for the future by drafting different positions. I think that this is one of those ones that we expected the Seahawks to address this position early. I still expect them to do that, at least one of those 2 positions that you mentioned, whether it's a guard or center. I expect them to take a shot at that early in the draft. But I think that they could wait and address the other position in that line later in this draft. And so that's the kind of guys that I'm going to be watching for to kind of see if some of those guys like, let's see, there's the center out of Oregon, and there's a couple of other guys. Sorry, got ahead of myself there. But there are several of those guys that I think that are in that day 3 conversation that I want to see if they, jump off the page.
All right. Yeah, I expect us to take at least one late offensive lineman. I could see us even using 2 late round picks on an offensive lineman. I would like to see at least one in the first 4 picks. At least one. 2 would make me happy. And for me, it's going to be the other drills, the agility drills, the short area quickness drills, the 3-cone, the 20-yard shuttle, things like that, because that's where you find those guys who are good in that short area. An example of this is Abe Lucas tested off the charts last year in short area quickness. Some of his numbers were better than Bobby Wagner's coming out in the draft. And you don't expect that from a 300-pounder. So if you find somebody who moves in a short area and has the experience, much like Abe Lucas did, maybe we take a shot on one of those guys, because that could translate like it did last year for us. Specifically, I'll be looking at one guard, Steve Avila, because I think they might target a guard for that first pick in the second round if they don't target offensive line in the first round. And that's about where I see him going. He's one of the top guards in this draft, and I want to see what we could get, because I think there's a good chance they'll be looking at him at least. And then centers. I'm looking at centers. So we all know John Michael Schmitz from Minnesota is the number 1 center. He's pretty much the consensus number 1 center on most people's board. So I'll be watching him. I'll be watching Oluwatimi out of Michigan, Luke Weipler out of Ohio State, and Joe Tittman out of Wisconsin. I think there's a chance that we could go with 2 centers in this draft and end up with a nice backup who could also play a backup guard role. That could do a lot to solidify that offensive line, which is definitely a position of need for the Seahawks.
Yeah, for sure. And I see that too. I mean, there are a lot of guys. Steve Avila also has experience playing center. So I think that's one of those things that can kind of double dip and address that position twice and still come away with a starting guard and a starting center, even if the guys that they draft have experience at both positions. The same thing can be said about Joe Tittman and Ricky Stromberg out of Arkansas. So Joe Tittman out of Wisconsin, Ricky Stromberg out of Arkansas. Both of these guys are listed as centers on their respective depth charts, but they have experience at guard as well. So yeah, like I said at the beginning, this and interior defensive tackle are the 2 positions I think that are the premier positions that the Seahawks are going to be looking at, because we know of all the positions to address on the team, the defensive and offensive lines on the inside are the 2 biggest positions of need going into this draft. So I expect to see at least 2, if not 3 picks address that offensive line interior.
Yeah, I would love to see it. Multiple picks on both the interior offensive line and interior defensive line. The running backs are also working out today. Do you have any running backs you're keeping an eye on?
I mean, nobody in specific. It's kind of funny. I think that there's a pretty much every draft that you see, or at least almost every mock draft that I have seen, shows the Seahawks addressing the running back position at some point during the draft. And so I think that there's guys on day 2, day 3 that the Seahawks can look at. I don't know if there's a specific player. I mean, I do want to see how Deuce Vaughn does. That's the guy out of Kansas State, mainly just because Kansas State is one of those schools that I think the Seahawks like to look at to address different positions. They've had some success there, namely Tyler Lockett. Yeah, I mean, there's no real specific guy that I'm looking at. I do expect the Seahawks to take a running back at some point in this draft. So I'll just kind of be looking at any of those guys that maybe aren't being mentioned in that same breath as, I mean, obviously Bijan Robinson we know is more than likely, if not absolutely, going to be the first running back off the board. So yeah, that's a class that I'll kind of be watching pretty much everybody to kind of see where they land on the athleticism.
Yeah, I'm watching late round guys, just like you said. We've got a few running backs that are free agents. We have Travis Homer and Rashad Penny. So we'll see what they do if they re-sign either of those guys. I could see them addressing running back to get some of that depth. I do want to see how fast Devin A-Chain is going to run, right?
Well, according to him, he's running 4.2. So,
and he could. I mean, he's the running back out of Texas A&M. He's run a 10.1 100 meter in track, which is Olympic type of numbers. I mean, he has legitimate speed. He could break records at the combine, and I'm hoping on this fast turf they have in Indy this weekend that he's able to put up some amazing numbers, because I think he has the ability to do it. Some of the guys I'm looking.
If anybody has a shot to break the 40 record, I mean, he's got the best shot of anybody this year easily.
Yeah. Some of the guys I'm looking at, Roschon Johnson out of Texas. It's Bijan Robinson's backup. This guy's good enough to start for many college teams out there. He's probably good enough to be in the rotation for a lot of NFL teams. I want to see how he tests. He's somebody I'm definitely watching. Deuce Vaughn, like you said, out of Kansas State. Chase Brown out of Illinois. His brother is a safety from Illinois who had a great combine. So let's hope that the twins both do well. They both improve their draft stock. I think he's somebody to watch, along with Eric Gray as well out of Oklahoma. Just guys that I want to see do well, but also guys I think might be targets later in the draft.
Do we know if the fullback out of was it North Dakota State,
Hunter Luke,
is he going to be working? Yes, is he going to be participating in these drills? Because if he is, that's a guy I want to see. This is a guy who maybe if there's any true fullback drafted this year, he's the guy. So and I know that the Seahawks, that's not a position of necessarily need or even high on anyone's priority list when it comes to drafting. But I think the Seahawks saw what a true fullback can do to your offense, especially in the Raiders game. So I would not be surprised to see them keep an eye on this guy as a later day 3 pick.
Yeah, I love a good fullback, and I think they saw that facing the Niners twice, and then the Raiders, like you said, that was Jakob Johnson that we faced against the Raiders, who's actually a free agent. So we'll see where he lands. But yeah, I would love to have a true fullback. I think it opens up what you can do on the offense. Obviously, there's a trade-off. That's a roster spot that you have to open up somewhere else. But yeah, I would definitely like to see Hunter Luepke do amazing. Yeah, let's get these fullbacks. Let's get these fullbacks back in the NFL. I'm here for that.
Who doesn't like a good power run game?
Exactly. Well, this has been the Let's Talk Seahawks podcast. We reviewed what we saw from the quarterbacks, wide receivers, and tight end groups, and gave a little preview of what we're looking at for the offensive linemen and running backs. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening to us. And as always, go Hawks.
Go Hawks.